la 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 Miss Saigon la 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 Miss Saigon la la la. You make me feel. You make me feel. You make me feel like a true woman. A Scooby-Doo-boo-boo-boo. Need a rule road trip. That should be the entire podcast. Just sing.
Ready?
Yes. Yes.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another exciting edition of Between You, Me, and Jose. I'm here today with some very special people. My name is Chris, by the way. You all know Donnell. What's up, Donnell? Last episode, you met Phil.
Hello.
So, we're going to have a deep discussion today. We never really had the chance to introduce ourselves on this podcast. We kind of just jumped right into it with some guests and just kind of did our thing. So, here's your episode to get to know us a little better. But also on top of that, there's some issues that I've been reading about lately that have kind of spurred my stoner thought process on the nature of life and all that good shit. And I've been reading a lot of articles about education and the education system, higher education. The gist of most of them is that if you're graduating from college in 2014, you're pretty much fucked. Which, is a simplification of the matter, but, for a lot of people in our age range, I mean, that's kind of true. We came up with our families telling us we had to go to school, we had to go to college if we wanted to get good jobs. If you want to make something of yourself, you got to go to college. It was pretty much I don't know. I feel like my generation was maybe one of the first, maybe second generation where it was pretty much mandated that you were going to go to college or you were going to be a fuck up. It became just expected. And I personally went to college. I went to an art school. Which I've had a talent for drawing and painting my whole life. So always been in art programs, and when it came time to they kind of put you on the spot where it's all right, I know you've been a kid for your whole life, but now you're an adult and next year you're going to have to decide what you want to do with your life. So at the, basically my senior year of high school, I'm put on the spot to okay, what the fuck are you going to do with your life? And, what interested me was art. That's what I had a talent in. That's what everyone my whole life said, you have to do something with this. And so, I listened to them, and I went to art school, California College of Arts and Crafts, now called California College of the Arts, CCA. It's here in San Francisco and Oakland. And I graduated in 2005 with a painting and drawing BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts. And I thought I had a great education. I learned a lot when I was there. But after graduating, it's pretty much done jack shit for me. Having an art school degree, I feel like people don't respect that whatsoever as a real degree, which is kind of ridiculous because we have to take the same shit that everybody else takes. We have to take science classes and math classes and all that shit. It's an accredited university, but it's not, it's not doing me any favors, really. Like, I feel like I value the process. I feel like I got a great education, but, now it's almost 10 years later. I'm like still $25,000 in debt and, working a job that doesn't pay a ton of money. Doesn't seem like there is a lot of options to make it up to that next bracket of income, So I don't know. I'm just pondering, like, have things changed so much that, like, nowadays you're actually worse off if you go to college, in terms of, like, you're starting yourself off in a negative, like most people. I know you guys both went to college. Did you take out loans?
Yeah, when I went to college, it was kind of the same case as you, where it was totally expected. I think that has something to do with like a socioeconomic bracket. I don't know if people from all walks of society are like told that college is the logical next step, or if some of them might think it's a bit of a reach, or like
Right.
hard for them to attain, like if their parents didn't go or something. But where I'm from, pretty much everyone's parents went. You're expected to go.
And where are you from, Daniel?
I'm from Cupertino, California. Apple headquarters. That's how people know it. There's not much else
Okay.
there. I think what made me a little different from other people in my socioeconomic bracket, or at least assumed bracket, was that my parents didn't really put away any money for me for college, so I was kind of on my own.
Yeah.
I went to a public university, but it was still super expensive once you function in cost of living and all of that. So yeah, I mean, my student debt is something that is like paralyzing. It's like there are life decisions that I make or don't make, and it's completely based on the fact that I'm like, $35,000 in the hole.
Right.
Yeah.
And what school did you go to?
I went to Berkeley, like UC Berkeley.
UC Berkeley. See, now that has more of like a, oh shit, he went to Berkeley, than like, oh shit, he went to California College of Arts and Crafts and majored in basket weaving.
It totally depends. I've noticed it depends on where I am. I notice a lot of people will ask the follow-up question, which is, what did you major in? And I majored in sociology. So when people hear that,
dumb fuck.
They're like, oh, you went to this elite university and you picked a major with no job outlook. And I don't know. I studied a lot of different things. I like happened to take a few more sociology classes than other things, and so that's what my degree is in. I kind of approached it as like I just want like a liberal arts background. I want to like learn some shit while I'm in school.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it as job training. If I did, I would have went to trade school. And in retrospect, I want to tell all the kids out there, go to trade school. Learn to fucking plumb or something. Don't be in any debt. Make 50, 60K by the time you're like 19 years old. And that's just like a better course of action than if you want to learn some shit, read books on the side.
That's the depressing reality, though.
Depressing
it's
reality.
like, we have to come to terms with the fact that college is job training. Like, basically, that's what it has boiled down to in 2014, is that you go to school so you can get a job. And to me, that's a little bit like, like when something just like makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and you're like, dude, that's not right. Like, to me, that's like heading down the wrong path for culture, where you pretty much want to boil everything down to like what is essential, and what we're deeming essential is your ability to be like a cog in the machine, basically. You got to be able to fucking work for a corporate company to be able to be worth the good goddamn. It's like, we've had this discussion on the podcast before about the value of art, and I think this is a good example of that. Like, the value of not just, when I say art, I don't mean just like a painting or something. I mean any kind of creative intellectual outlet, I'm using the blanket term art to describe that, but to me, that's the thing that really is the driver of change in our culture is art, and people ingesting other people's creative endeavors is what really leads them to develop their own things, you know? So many people are inspired by art and then go on to start a business. And there's no like one-to-one correlation of like, you know, oh, you know, because you ended up starting like an engineering business, that engineering aspect is more important than the art that inspired you to do that in the first place, that maybe you wouldn't have even done that had it not been for the inspiration of that other thing. I don't know. I think that's something that we really need to take a look at in our culture. And I mean, obviously it's very difficult because we are on this track and everyone is very fixated on making ends meet. Like, it's hard to be a creative type when, you know, you're going to get kicked out of your apartment. So I don't know. I definitely understand what you're telling the chillins out there, but I don't know. I don't want that to be the case.
Right.
Like, part of me feels like defeated just saying that to people.
It's like I fought that battle. Like,
Right.
I have the same problem with it that you do. And so while I was in school and I kept having opportunities to, you know, change my major, as people kept telling me, you know, switch to engineering, switch to like even Berkeley has the Haas School of Business. And if you switch and you do business, you can like possibly still make some money. People kept telling me that. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to do that. Those aren't things that are interesting to me. That's not the type of education I want. And I fought it. And like, here I am struggling with money. And like my peers who chose to sell out. I actually have one friend who's super artsy, you know, he's one of Phil's roommates. Artsy guy, very creative, started out as like a art and psych major, and then his junior year switched to computer science because he wanted to have a job, and now he makes about 3 times as much money as me. And he kind of hates his job, but he makes 3 times as much money as me.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
But will he kill himself at the age of 30 is the question, you know?
Yeah.
What about you, Phil? Where did you go to school?
I studied physics at San Francisco State.
Oh, shit.
I got my bachelor's of science there, and I'm currently finishing up my master's.
So how much you pulling down a year, homie?
Well, I'm a graduate student.
100 G's?
I'm a graduate student, and it's basically slave labor. You know, we do a lot for very little money and very little respect, especially in a field like physics. A lot of people don't even really know what physics is, actually, which is weird to me. But
that's science, right?
Yeah, it's a science. It's a science. And yeah, I honestly have so much to say about this kind of stuff. Well,
let's hear it, motherfucker. We got a podcast.
Where do you
here,
start?
like.
I mean, you start in high school, right? And everyone tells you have to go to school to get a job, but no one says what you should go for. They just say go so you can make money, and that way you can, you know, be a cog and like have kids and pay for your kids' college, and your kids can also be unhappy and go for something that they don't really want to do. And then, you know, you pick something, and then somewhere down along the lines you realize that you don't really want to do it, or you do, and then you make no money. It's just, I don't know. I think everyone right now, at least in our generation, is struggling with that. I'm making money, but I'm not happy, or I'm not making money, but I have this thing that I love, but no one values it, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. And why don't I just take a little bit of money and move to an island on Vietnam and just live by myself happily, or instead of being a part of, you know, this kind of culture that says that I have to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know.
Well, were you always interested in physics or, you know, the other sciences growing up? Was it a natural thing for you, like, I'm going into physics? Or was it like, all right, motherfucker, you got like 2 months to figure out what you're going to be. Do it.
I was actually really lucky that I was really interested in physics. But I was sort of going into college, like, jack of all trades, master of nothing kind of thing, where, like, when I graduated, the university hated me because I had 2 or 3 times as many units as they typically like when you graduated. I stayed forever just learning everything I could because I refused. I wrote down physics when I first started, but I always intended to change, kind of thing. I was like, well, I'm going to dip my fingers in all the little cups and see what takes. And just sort of liked physics more than anything else. But, you know, I've always been a musician. I thought, well, maybe I'd do that. But then there's that pressure of you're not going to make any money. And, you know, money's not important, but being able to live and eat, is kind of important. And so,
A little bit.
yeah. And then when I got my BS, there were some job offers, but I decided that no, I wanted to do the master's, and maybe not a PhD, but I'll do a master's, and then, you know, I'll get my fill of school and then go get a job. And now I'm planning on applying to PhD programs for chemical engineering or material science, not because I'm tired of physics, but I pretty much already do material science, and I guess I'm selling out, but like a physicist that does material science gets paid much less than a material scientist that does material science. Like that word on the paper, like all physicists are trying to get paid as engineers because they get paid much, much more. And I don't know. You gotta live, right?
Well, what constitutes material sciences?
Oh, God, it's actually a really broad field. But what I would like to do is to engineer materials that will lead to like photovoltaics, solar cells, helping out with the energy crisis. I think the world needs to go green and needs to figure out how to do it conveniently to accommodate everyone who's frankly too lazy to do it themselves. You know, I mean, the people, my friends can't even recycle it.
Can't even recycle.
That's real.
Bottle and recycle.
So, all right, you went to school for something that's actually, you know, worth a good goddamn. So
So they say.
So they say. I mean, what are your... Well, this is another thing that I actually wanted to touch on as well, is the whole grad school thing. Because I feel like a lot of people... It kind of stems from the fact that you're forced into deciding what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And your college run is up, and you're not quite ready to go and do it for real, you know? Like, and I think a lot of people, they want to keep the student experience going because it sort of puts off having to do that other shit. And
It's familiar.
yeah, and you know, it's like a, I don't know, it's a bubble that is not like the rest of reality, where you can sort of, yeah, it's stressful, but at the same time it's nurturing in ways, and it's, you know, you don't have to deal with a lot of the stress that drives you crazy in the real world, like mortgage payments and, you know, paying property tax and, you know, all that kind of shit. So, but by all accounts, like the best time to go to grad school is after you've been working for a while and you really know what you want to do and can go and just focus on that and really make those connections, rather than, you know, having it be a constant, you know, seamless transition from elementary school to junior high school to high school to college to postgraduate work, etc. It's like, I don't know. At no point are you putting yourself in the situation where you have to confront the real world in a way that's going to let you know, that's going to inform the decision to actually, you know, decide what you want to focus on for a master's program or PhD. I don't know. What made you want to go straight into it? Is that common practice in your field?
There are actually kind of two schools of thought. You should just keep going straight, or you should take some time off. And I go back and forth on whether or not I regret going straight or because I am definitely burnt out, and I plan on taking a year before doing a PhD. And I am totally open to actually just changing my mind and bailing to get a job or something like that. But I mean, you have professors that say, well, there's no shame in just taking a year off. I have a professor who says just go teach for America or something, do something else. And then I have another professor, my advisor, graduated from a top school in China when she was 19, and then she went straight to Princeton and then got her PhD when she was 22. There's some people that are just know what they want to do and are really good at it and just kill. And I'm good at what I do. I'm great at what I do, but I'm not that level of virtuoso. I feel like if I loved it a little bit more to that point where, that's all I think about. But I also love music. I love going out and having a social life and doing this kind of thing. But I really think it depends on the person. They have to do some soul searching and decide if they want to keep going straight. For me, I kept going straight because I knew I wouldn't come back. You get that golden handcuffs of some money, because some money is better than no money, right? And knowing that you're going to go back to having no money is really, really difficult. And
That's real.
Because especially when you're someone with a physics degree and you find a job, then you kind of want to latch onto it. For people in most engineering fields and computer science, it's a lot easier to find a job. For physicists and chemists, it's a little bit harder, especially for chemists. You end up running into this thing where it says, come work for us, but you need 5 years of experience first. It's like, well, I'm an undergrad. Where do I get 5 years of experience?
Right.
Well, you should have been working in a lab. Are you published? And yeah, like you can get published as an undergrad, but it's sort of you have to be at the right place, right time kind of thing. It doesn't really say anything about you other than you were at the right place, right time. And it's hard. There's one lab at SF State that puts out a lot of papers, and Zigong Chen, he's a big deal, and my professor, Waning Man. But there are a lot of other, especially state universities, that aren't as lucky in other departments.
It's just like a budget thing? Is that a big part of it?
Oh, yeah. There isn't a lot of support.
Right.
Especially, I can mainly just talk for physics, but...
What departments have more support, like at SF State?
At SF State, biology, probably. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of biology majors, at least within the sciences. It's really cutthroat getting into a biology class at SF State.
That's interesting. I can't imagine you running into that problem. Like, that was always a problem for me as like a soft science major. I would look over at like anyone in hard sciences or engineering or business and just understand that their endowment was like 10 times that of my department. But physics, I don't think physics had any shortage of funds.
Well, Berkeley has
a good physics program.
They do. They have a lot of weight. Yeah, I mean, your graduate department is to thank for that. Like the grad studies there is fantastic, at least within the sciences.
When you mentioned that you have to have 5 years experience, and when confronted with that, they're like, well, haven't you been publishing? Haven't you been doing such and such? This is something that like maybe I'm just a fucking idiot, but like nobody taught me how to go to college. Like here I am like doing the fucking work. I'm doing my hardest on all the assignments, and I'm focused on school. I also have to work part-time, but I'm focused on getting through school, doing the best I can. But turns out that whole time I should have also been doing internships. I should have also been
kissing some professors' asses.
Yeah, like volunteering here, volunteering there, donating my time to such and such organization and group, and be networking and developing those contacts. To know as
many people as possible.
Which is, it may seem logical to an extent, but you're a kid, like, and that's another thing that I have some issue with is like we're sort of put on the spot to be able to make the determination of what we want to do and where we want to go without having been provided the tools to really make an educated extrapolation of what all that is going to entail and what's going to be necessary, and an understanding of what the landscape is that we're entering. And so most people, you're just forced to kind of go, oh, well, what am I interested in? What am I into? What am I good at? What am I passionate about? And that's why you have so many people that are going and getting degrees in literature and art and et cetera, these things that don't have a ton of practical job skills provided to you while doing that, as far as the public is concerned. But, are we preparing students to be able to get the most out of college? And that entails like letting people know, like, yes, you're going to have to go and do the work. You're going to have to show up for class, but it's also about preparing for the job world, and you should be networking. You should be doing all this shit, which is something that, like, nobody taught me that shit.
You're making me think about like my middle school to high school transition. It's funny. Like,
Hey, fuck you, man.
This is like when tracking first became apparent to me. I didn't really realize what was happening, but some kind of advisor from the high school came by and asked us to pick, which classes we wanted for freshman year. And it was like, you want bio or integrative science or like accelerated bio. And then the way she went over it was like, she made accelerated bio seem really scary and like something you wouldn't want to do unless you were like totally in love with bio. And then like the integrative science she made seem like fun and inviting and like a good introduction to science. It was like almost what she was recommending to the class. And then later on I realized that like a lot of the students in my class had already been coached by their parents about which courses they should be taking, and so they went straight for the accelerated bio, and then next year they took AP bio, and then a couple years later they were sitting next to me in classes at Berkeley. And it's like that the dissemination of knowledge about like what you should be doing in the next step came from somewhere other from the institution. I think that was it's like it's so intentional. I don't think the college advisors and the teachers are aware that they're perpetuating like it's constants within the system. So if your parents don't know about that shit, you're not going to know about it, and your kids aren't going to know about it. Right. But that's definitely the case.
So did your parents go to college?
Neither of. So my mom went to community college, and my dad don't even believe finished high school.
Like later in life or straight out of high school?
Yeah, my mom went to community college after I was born.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, same thing with my family. Neither of my parents went to college. My mom went back to school, when I was already probably in my, early teens, and went and got her teaching credentials, and, then went and got her master's, and, has pretty much gone as high as she can at this point. But, while I was going through that, I didn't have anyone in my family that had done it before me to really put me on the game, Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's
went the hard route, and so you were destined for the hard route.
Yeah. It's it's kind of fucked. Like, and I'm not saying this should all fall on like the bureaucracy of the public education system or something to be preparing people for this stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, isn't it the purpose of school to prepare you for life and educate you on how to get through shit? I mean, if that's not the point, then what are we doing? Like, I don't know. Did your parents go to college, Phil?
Yeah, so my mom went to college here, and my dad went to college as well, but he was born and raised in Sicily, and then came over here to go to USF, and then did a master's down at Stanford. So though he was college educated, he didn't know that the way the American education system worked, at least from up to high school, up to including. So like the transition from high school to college for me kind of seemed like the same thing. It was one day the guidance counselor kind of showed up and was like, oh, by the way, you guys need to take the SATs and you need to figure out like who's going to write these letters of rec for you and where you want to go. And then it was never mentioned that it really matters. It really, really matters.
You were
like,
8 years
really
behind.
matters. yeah. And it was like, okay, well, when are these tests? Oh, like a couple of weeks from now. Like, oh, okay, okay. This is a man who always seemed to hate his job too, so maybe that's why. But it was just sort of nonchalantly told to us at the last minute. And it was a very strange transition when I look back on it, and I think that it could have been handled a little bit better.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
But I totally agree that I think parents have to take it upon themselves.
I think if there was an assumption that some sort of natural tracking would occur, like smart kids will do well on the SATs and stupid kids will do poorly, like fundamentally that might work better for me than what like what's actually happening, which is like kids with parents with like the cultural capital and knowledge do well,
Yeah.
and kids with parents who don't have that just like aren't gonna do as well.
I have issues with standardized testing though, like multiple choice kind of things. Crazy issues with that.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole nother
That's a whole
nother
thing.
yeah, but it's relevant because it's part of not preparing people. Like, you know, even though I feel like at every stage I got a pretty good education. You know, I went to public high schools. I went to an art school, which, you know, shouldn't have taught me anything but how to make baskets and shit. But, you know, I think that I learned a lot. And it, more so in college, it taught me how to think. And for that, you know, I don't know if I would say it's worth it because, you know, $25,000 in debt still 10 years later. And, you know, no real, well, have you guys done the math on your student loans for how much you're actually going to be paying?
I try not to think about it too.
Dude,
I
it's-
really try
I'm
not
like
to think about
really
it.
afraid, and I feel powerless and weak, and I hide under my bed at night.
Dude, it's
thought of it.
the fucking worst. I did it once, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again. But it's really disturbing, and this is something that they're not really preparing you for.
You just sign away at 18, like, well, I want to go to
Yeah.
college. I guess I'll take all these loans.
And they make you sit through, you know, the I forget what they call it, but
Entrance
the
counseling?
entrance and exit counseling, et cetera, where basically they're like, so you know you're borrowing money, right? You're like,
So
yeah,
you know you're fucked, right?
Well, no.
You understand you're going to have to pay us back?
right.
Sign here.
That's, dude, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm going to owe you money, but they don't explain the fact that I'm going to end up paying you probably, you know, $100,000 for a $30,000 loan. It's fucking ridiculous. And, you know, if you really want to get deep into the shit, you know, did that money even come from anywhere in the first place? Or did somebody just type down $30,000 in a computer, click send, and all of a sudden, you know,
think
the
about that
illusion
a
of
lot.
$30,000
I think about that a
popped
lot.
up.
Yeah.
And really they're just, you know, extracting the money from you.
Some fat dude is sitting somewhere like,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, it's fucking crazy, but
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's the reality of that we live in. And a lot of people, like Donnell mentioned, they come from a family that has the social capital to be able to prepare them for this shit and cushion them should anything go wrong, and make sure that they get the best out of the deal, you know, which a lot of people don't have, you know. I don't know, man. It's really a crazy issue because it's several generations at this point that are like in the hole on this. And once the older generations die off and it's just us and it's every single motherfucker is like, you know, $30,000 in debt at least, you know, what then, you know, what is that world that we're living in? It's basically a life of indentured servitude. And, you know, you're never, you know, you're very unlikely to get out from under it unless you've been provided with the tools ahead of time to be able to play the system. You know, I know some people have, you know, taken out some loans and well in advance calculated out, you know, how much money they were going to have to make in a career to be able to pay this off in 4 years and then be able to, you know, be free and clear. But I don't know. I didn't, you know, nobody in my family had gone through that experience and known to be able to tell me, hey, you should do this. And to say, what I read a lot is people chastising younger generations for not having the responsibility to know what they're getting themselves involved in. And I definitely think that that's part of it. But at the same time, you can't expect someone to know something that they don't have the tools to learn about. I mean, I don't know. Did you, when you were 17, 18, did you know the game? Like, did you really, was your idea of what the real world was anything close to what it actually was?
Definitely not.
I mean, it wasn't for me.
I had a little bit of an idea. It was like kind of visible to me, and I thought like I was special and unique, and like those rules wouldn't apply to me.
So you had like the millennial disease,
I guess.
which is the other criticism is that, you know, millennials think they're entitled to everything. They think the world should be handed to them. They don't want to work hard, and they just bitch and complain about everything.
I was willing to work hard, but I thought like with talent and hard work, I could overcome like
Right.
systemic structures.
Well, that's, you know, that's what they
That's what they teach.
that's what they teach you. That's
in that
what
sense, I
everyone
guess I
thinks the
wasn't.
American dream is. You know, everyone gets sold this same dream that if you just work hard, you can be anything you want to be. You could be the president. You know, it's like,
Obama gave me a lot of hope. Also,
for real.
no.
At first, I'll admit I got played the first time. I was like, oh shit, this motherfucker's smart. He's talking some real shit. And then, like, I think within the first week that he took office and announced his cabinet, I was like, motherfucker, this motherfucker, he got me.
More of the same.
Yeah, well,
A little darker than the rest, but more of the same.
just a little bit. A little bit darker than Joe Biden after a holiday.
I just want to say George W. Bush is a great painter. If you haven't seen his paintings, go check those out.
Actually, I do agree with that. I think his paintings are pretty interesting. You know,
I want to hear your take. You're the one with the BFA in painting and illustration, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can separate the art from the artist, and there's something interesting about watching or looking through the eyes of someone who you view as totally, you know, twisted, degenerate asshole who fucked everybody and killed
Care about
babies.
black people.
Doesn't care about black people at all. Actually, you know what, Donnell? I want to put this to rest. Have you seen that GIF of George W. Bush dancing with black people in New Orleans?
I haven't.
I haven't seen
George Bush danced with some black people.
Well, you know what? Go educate yourself, and maybe you won't be spouting out such ignorance.
Maybe George Bush does love black people. after
Dude,
all.
you didn't see him dancing with black people?
He won't fix the levees, but he'll dance with them. That's cool.
You can't
That-
dance with someone you don't love.
That totally proves that he gives a shit about black
I
people.
had a couple black people over his house for dinner.
Obviously. Anyway, but I don't know. There's something kind of. I like dark, twisted shit. So to me, there's something interesting about looking at these totally banal paintings from someone who is, a lot of people consider to be an evil person. But to me, I don't see George W. as any different than Obama. You know, you're getting played by the same people. You're just a fucking, you're a goober to them. So, you're just the one who happens to be shucking and jiving in front of the camera at that particular moment. And he happened to be dopier than most. But now his father is a different story. H.W. Bush is a piece of work. But I don't know. George W.'s paintings are interesting to me. Check them out. They're weird. He paints himself in the bathtub.
I didn't see that
I
one.
remember seeing
That one I didn't see.
You haven't seen him in the
bathtub one?
bathtub?
Seeing that one.
Dude, he's got one of him like
I've
with
only
his legs sticking out of the water in the
What?
bathtub.
I've only seen the portraits.
And there's
Is it
like
semi-nude?
he's naked, but you don't see the junk.
No genitalia.
It's
Oh.
under
That's a
the
shame.
water.
Is he making like a sexy pose? Like,
No, you don't see his face.
Like-
That's the interesting thing about
oh,
it. You don't see his face.
Does he have a
There's this
veil?
weird detachment to it. It's crazy. Like if you really want to break it down, there's one of him in the shower where it's from the back. You only see the back of his head, and there's a small mirror reflecting a portion of his face, sort of removed and detached from the body, sort of very, I don't know. That kind of shit is just interesting to me. Like looking at the it's like researching the Zodiac killer or something. Like, you're like, this is fucked, but man, this
Fascinating.
motherfucker was crazy. Like, how do you get that crazy? Like, there's something interesting about being that crazy. But, you know, that's my take on it. But anyway, check out George W. Bush's paintings. Don't support him. Don't give him any money. He's got enough money.
Yeah.
But, you know, check him out online. It's interesting. Analyze it. Put your fucking brain to work, people. Use that liberal arts education for something. But I don't know how we even got onto the George W. Bush topic, but
I have no idea either.
I have a suspicion.
oh yeah, Obama gave you hope, but not really. But that's part of the thing is that and our generations are kind of waking up to this, that you are being sold a load of shit. And I think Obama, for a large percentage of the population, was that straw that broke the camel's back in terms of really showing people and hitting home like this is all a game. This is all an effort to create a distraction, really, like to distract you from the actual power that's operating behind the scenes. And I think the fact that so many people bought into the Obama dream, and then so quickly that shit, you know, was revealed to be an illusion and really, you know, a marketing ploy. I think that's opening a lot of people's eyes and, you know, educating them a lot more than, you know, the school system has about what shit is really like out there. And it's, I don't know, man. It's like a depressing topic to cover, but I think it's something that we really need to confront as a culture. Why we're doing this shit, you know? Why do we keep, even though we know deep down that shit is fucked and is fucking us, we still keep contributing to it. We, you know, still keep perpetuating the lies that got us into it. It's like an abuser, like passing on the abuse, you know. And I don't know if it's like a conscious effort or if it's just programming or what. But this, not saying that a college education isn't worth anything, but, you know, is it better for people just to go straight into trying to make something of themselves and not bother with that and start out not owing anything and, you know, learn through life and experience, but rather than sitting in a classroom? I don't know.
You know, when you threw the last question out there, it made me think about some of the people I know who are like extraordinarily rich, like not wealthy, but like rich.
Yeah.
You know, they took a year off after high school or two and they traveled or they like went to write for a magazine or they modeled. And I think it's like, in part they had that opportunity because of the money, but they also had like a freedom of the mind. I think the rest of us are so focused on just basic survival.
Yeah.
We're never really addressing these issues or like thinking deeply on them or challenging them because we're just like, oh my God, I just got to like get some food in my mouth. I need to go to college real quick. I need to get this job right now. I can't step back and think. And then, but there definitely are people, or even in like Germany or Scandinavia where it's normal for kids to take a gap year and find themselves. And it's like, they have that, there's like a financial security cushioning them and like the state is taking care of them. It's like their state has a whole different approach.
Now
Ours
let's
is
get into the deep dark shit. Is it intentional?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You think so?
100%.
You think the man is trying to,
I think the man has been keeping us down. I think he's still keeping us down. I think he does things to like try and appease us and make sure we don't revolt. It's keeping us down.
That's real.
I feel like there's this pressure of if you don't, like, you have to do it now. You have to go to college now. Like if you take that year off, you're like digging yourself into this hole, and going back to college is even harder, and you're now 1 year older than everyone else for some reason. That's a bad thing. Like, yeah. And then I don't know, I look around my program, I see people who are like 20 years older than me. Like, oh, okay, I guess
they do great.
Yeah, and they're doing fine. They're going to continue doing fine. But for some reason it's bad. They made a terrible decision, and maybe grad school is a terrible decision. But that's a totally
sense enough not to sign off on those loans if you took a year off.
Yeah. And I feel like there's this feeling of for some reason, taking that year off is financially more of a disaster than taking all those loans, which I know isn't true, but it feels that way because society tells me so.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty, that's part of the programming, It's, I don't know, the idea that the education system is a tool of control, I think is pretty obvious to me. I mean, in terms of like looking back at what you learned in school and the narrative you were fed and how that links up with the reality of the situation. And as you get older and I don't know, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm interested in history, and I've learned infinitely more about history than I ever did in school as an adult, listening to podcasts. If you're into history, I definitely recommend you check out Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast. It's fucking amazing. He covers all kind of topics, from the Mongols to ancient Rome to like Martin Luther, shit like that. And he gives a really interesting perspective to it. And sometimes he'll go into like long 4-part, like 8-hour podcasts about, Genghis Khan was one of the most interesting ones. So definitely, if you're into history, check out Hardcore History. It's an awesome podcast. But anyway, little sidetrack there. But just learning about history as an adult and learning all the different facets that we never even got a hint of in school, and then being able to contrast, well, what did we learn, and what agenda does it serve for someone to, be selling you that story as opposed to the other story, It's, I don't know, it starts to become really apparent that like you're taught limited skills. Mostly the function of it is to prepare you for, entering the system, getting a job, and being able to be a cog in that machine and not be too disruptive. I was never taught critical thinking skills in school. I don't know about you guys. Did you guys both go to public school?
I went to public school. I actually had a couple of professors. One who was just like an amazing dude, like probably spent every hour of the evening planning his curriculum for the next day. Like he definitely taught it. And then I had an alcoholic English teacher in high school who would come in stoned and drunk, play Beatles songs, and then just like heavy get into shit. Like he'd expect us to have done the reading and then just like dive in heavy and like give us some history from the period and then ask us to like debate about it. And like he was like kind of depressed and intense, and like I think he scared half the class. But for me it was like, oh, whoa, now that's an education. Like, I'm learning something now. Like, I think he's still teaching, actually. Hope he has gotten over his issues with dependency.
I should go back and preface what I said. It's not that I didn't get taught critical thinking skills in school. It's that I didn't get taught them until probably 9th grade, 10th grade maybe. And I think what did it for me, and this goes to justify the usefulness of art in society, was my English teacher, Miss Marshall. Shout out to Miss Marshall. She made us read The Catcher in the Rye and made us sit there and break it apart and analyze the symbolism, break down what these things might mean. And that was really the first time that I was taught that not everything is what it seems. That there's a layer of subcontext to almost everything that is like another language. And if you're not taught how to read it, you go through life completely oblivious to half the shit that's going on, And it was just learning like that tiny little bit of information that really has, changed my life from that point on. And I just imagine like what would my life have been like if that class never happened? If that program had been eliminated, or that teacher had been considered to not be effective enough by entrance and exit exams. That I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about this. My mom being a teacher, I know a fair amount about it. That the new policy basically for teachers to be able to judge their effectiveness is they test the students going in, and then they test them coming out. And if they show improvement in that time, then you're good. If not, if they stay the same or if they decrease, then you're fucked. Like, you might lose your job. And that sounds kind of logical.
For some.
For some.
I don't think so.
But then think
at
about
all.
this. Like, doesn't that create a world, or a situation at least? I don't want to get too like dramatic with the hyperbole here. But like, doesn't that create a situation where it's more advantageous for the teacher for the students to be stupid at the beginning?
Oh, yeah,
Like, if you score real low on the first test, then all you got to do is like, be somewhat smart at the end, and the teacher's good. It's
I didn't even think of it. Like
yeah, I mean,
that.
it's a really kind of a weird thing, and it's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation. Not factoring in real world factors in a student's life that might cause them to perform poorly on a test. This particular set of questions that person may not, that may just be the two things that they don't know about that you happen to be asking them, shit like that. And also, like, when you're considering that education is preparing someone for a particular test, you're getting into shaky territory, in my opinion.
Get teachers like cheating by giving the test to the students ahead of time and stuff like that.
Oh,
Just read
yeah.
an article about that.
Oh, for real?
Yes, like these two teachers were convicted of like getting access to exams and showing all their students in advance, and it was like because those teachers had come under fire the year before for their students not moving enough on the test.
Yeah.
It was like a super like disadvantaged group of students like who arrived at them like illiterate at like high school age. It's like, how can you, when you're given that, like if someone gives you a spoon, can you cut up a lamb?
It also, I feel like it assumes that everyone learns at the same pace or the same way.
Yeah.
And it also assumes that it's completely the teacher's, it's all the teacher, right? I feel like the student really has to also take part in the learning. Like, you can't just, I taught for a year and a half physics for pre-meds, basically. And you get students who loved asking questions, loved everything about the class. And you got the students who also just didn't care for the class, but they want to be doctors. So they're going to ace it. So they're going to work really hard and try their best to understand it. But then you also get the students that they want their C and they want to get out of there. And they take no part in the class. They shut off. They just don't care. And there's little that you can really do to crack that shell. I mean, you can try as hard as you can, but it's also up to that student, that person, to be open to learning. And I don't know, you get a lot of that.
Well, there's family issues in there as well, because I feel like in a lot of ways, life has changed a lot in the last, like, let's say 50 years, with like the women's liberation movement. There's a lot of families now where both parents are working, and it's sort of a byproduct of this has been that parents don't have the time to parent. So I feel like a lot of parents think of school as like a proxy for parenting. Like, they're supposed to be teaching you the shit. I gotta work. I got bills to pay. I got food to put on the table. And, that can't be a teacher's job to like do parenting. But it's sort of become expected. And I mean, I just think I feel so much for teachers, because I think teachers are the most important job in the world. You know, I feel like an example of just how fucking backwards we are is the fact that like teachers aren't the highest paying job there is. To me, that's like a no-brainer. If you don't have teachers, you don't have any other jobs. You need someone teaching you to be a doctor, you know? Therefore, in this grand scheme of things, a teacher is more important than a doctor. Because without that teacher, there is no doctor. You know, it's this, and we have come to diminish the effect of that, you know, of transferring knowledge, and there being a value in people that transfer knowledge and keep the flame burning, you know? But it's, you know, it's, how are you going to teach a class if the students that you're teaching haven't been primed at all to be able to even receive an education? For a brief amount of time after graduating, I considered going into teaching because my mom was a teacher, and you can get some of your loans forgiven if you teach in certain inner city schools for a certain amount of time. I was like, cool. I kind of want to be a teacher anyway. I like teaching. But ultimately, I started thinking back to my high school experience and some of the classes that I was in, some of the students that I was in there with, and just how fucking just straight up and down ignorant and disruptive and like unwilling to like let someone tell them anything. And just, I can't imagine that that's gotten any better since my high school years. In fact, I'm assuming it got worse. But I don't know. I was like scared off by that. I'm like, I imagine myself standing in front of a class and like feeling good, being like, all right, kids, we're going to read some Camus or some shit like that. And then like somebody throws a fucking like Snapple bottle at my head. It's like, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, this is not going to be what I was imagining. This is not what I was preparing for. And I'm essentially going to have to be like a camp counselor / like prison warden and make sure these kids don't fucking put me out of a job by like fucking this shit up at the end of the year, you know? And that's not, you know, I don't want to contribute to that. But the question arises, like, why aren't we doing anything to change it? Like, I don't know, we could do, there's some, you mentioned that everyone learns at a different pace. Mm-hmm. Phil mentioned that. And I think that's totally true. I think everybody learns in a different way.
Yeah.
Not everybody. I think there's probably like, you know, maybe 5 or 6 different like types of personality that learn better in certain circumstances. But like, we have done nothing to like change the way we do things to accommodate that knowledge that is pretty obvious. So I don't always want to jump straight into conspiracies, but like, what is the reasoning behind that? Like, why we pour so much money into education, although it's getting less and less, but like, why isn't it any of it applied to stuff like that? What do you think?
I mean, my first thought is that it's like, it's intentional, which is what we were talking about earlier. And I'm thinking about how there's kind of like 2 education systems. There's one for the elite, and then there's one for everyone else. And if you look at like, you know, Boston Latin or even Bellarmine in San Jose to an extent, but like kind of like elite school institutions, they get, you know, 6 students to a teacher. The teachers sit in a circle with them, debate, teach them critical thinking. They read things that I didn't read until college. They get a real education. And it's like, that to me, that's America and the world saying, okay, you kids at these elite programs, you're going to run the world. And you at this high school that's teaching standards, you're going to be the cogs in the machine. And we're not going to teach you too much. And we don't really want you to be too smart, but you need to be able to fill out forms at the DMV.
Yeah.
And if you can do more than that, you'll become a problem for these kids graduating from Boston Latin and turn Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing those are private schools.
Yeah.
I don't know about them schools, man. But I don't know. I think this reminds me a lot of a really serious current issue, which is net neutrality, which a lot of people don't understand what net neutrality is. But basically what it boils down to is there's a desire to create basically that exact same system with the internet, where they can sort of create tiers of, oh, well, you can afford to get, this internet, so you'll get, very slow internet. You're not going to really be able to download anything, or, you get the poor people internet. And if you got the money, everything at your fingertips. And right now, that's not the way it is. You can pay for different speeds, but the long and short of it is that it's really an effort to be able to suppress people's ability to access the internet freely, and be able to put additional barriers for basically struggling lower income people to be able to have access to this tool, which is probably the one thing that can help them turn shit around, is the ability to access information cheaply and quickly, and to be able to monitor what people are doing and throttle their connection if you feel like they're doing too much or doing the wrong things, shit like that. It's a really fucking dangerous issue, and we're going to get into a situation at some point where there's a version for the elites and there's a version for the rest of us. And the version for the rest of us is really, not anything really. It's like a public school education. You might luck out and get something good out of it, but chances are you're going to be fucked. I don't know. But I'm curious to know, because Phil is new to our show. Phil, is your head on a conspiracy swivel? Are you
I do like conspiracy theories. I don't buy into a lot of them, but I love hearing about them. My old advisor was always on Dredge Report, and she loved conspiracy theories, and we talk about them all the time. And you get physicists drunk who work for like Lawrence Livermore or something. They start to say things like, "Oh my God, I need to know. Tell me more." And their friend drags them out of the room.
Yeah.
And I love conspiracy theories.
Dude,
Classified shit.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Classified stuff.
We need to get a mic in that Lawrence Livermore lab.
Yeah.
You need a little soundboard that plays the X-Files theme song in here. Just really quickly.
But I don't know. Do you think that there's some kind of intent behind the education policy in the country today? Or do you think it's just fucked because we're fucked and we're stupid?
In my experience as a grad student, I think that the people who run universities are complete fools, and I think that's where it stems from. I think the people who run departments...
Shots fired. Bang, bang.
I think the people that run departments are brilliant. They're always professors. They're some brilliant professor, but then the person above them that actually runs the university, well, then there's the dean of the college, and then the president of the university, are always complete fools, and they allocate money to all the wrong spots. I feel like I was always told that universities, schools are businesses, and it's like, okay, I understand that, I get it, but until you become a grad student and you start having to write proposals and begging foundations for money, asking the school to help you out, and they're like, no, this isn't going to actually give us any intellectual property, this isn't going to have any overhead, you kind of get shit on so much that you realize that all the money that comes in is just given to... I don't even know where it goes, frankly. We can't even get markers for our classrooms, and I don't know what they're doing, frankly. I mean, there was a whole fiasco at SS State about the science building getting closed down because they found asbestos, mercury, and lead in the building. But if you really look into it, then the amount that they found in the building isn't any more than there is in the rest of San Francisco buildings. Mm-hmm. And they just started tearing it up, which is what you shouldn't do. And my lab is in that building. So that was a whole semester totally gone of research.
So
And,
did you dig into that a little bit? Are there some conspiracy theories about that?
Oh, I think they're all just fools. I think that I don't think there's a conspiracy
behind
theory.
Well,
fools?
that's the question. I think it's, it's easy for a lot of people to dismiss things and say, oh, well, these people are just stupid. Like that's that's the answer. That it's nothing. They're just idiots. And that's, that is definitely the case in a lot of situations. But you think about the fact that, in something like what you're explaining, there were contracts involved with that. The company that tears down and then eventually rebuilds the building, those are motivating factors as well. And a lot of, think about this fact that a majority of funding from schools comes from the government in one way or another. If you're getting, even if you're getting a Pell Grant or, something that is a government-backed loan or a government-backed grant, etc., that's essentially like the government taking tax money from people and then giving it to a corporation or a school or whatever, and then that school then saying, okay, well, this money, rather than being spent on education, we're going to take this money and earmark it for this completely superfluous thing, tearing down a building that doesn't really need to get torn down, because that's going to facilitate the flow of money to this group of people who, were always going to be the beneficiary of the money. In the long run, it was always meant for them, and all of this is just like a shell game to get it to them without everybody being up in arms about it. That's, if your head is on a conspiracy swivel like mine is, then you start to think about things in that way, and you're like, well, maybe, yeah, there are idiots populated along the way for the sake of greasing the wheels and making this whole process easy and providing a layer of accountability that shields the actual, shit going on behind the scenes. But I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing any shit now. It's to the point where anytime somebody says something to me, I'm like, really? Let me think about the alternate version of what this could actually be about.
So, what's your education conspiracy theory?
I don't know if I have a developed one. I think that the most logical explanation to me is that it's just a way to keep the masses in check and keep them in a place where they're easily controlled. You control the amount of access they have to information from jump. It's required by law to go to school. That's something that we kind of we don't really think about, but it's been mandated that everyone has to go through this system, basically. So that to me is one thing where it's okay, you're forcing everybody to go through it. Not to say that it's not a good thing that people get an education,
Right.
but at the same time, you're basically forcing people to go through a system that you've created. And that system is set up to basically narrowly define what you get access to and the tools that you have to basically tackle the rest of your life. Because in my opinion, people can only make the decision that they had the tools available at the time to make that decision, So right away you're putting people at a disadvantage where you, as the dictating entity, have access to infinitely more information than you're providing to everyone else. That's one thing that is, if it's intentional, it's pretty fucking evil. If it's just a byproduct of generations and generations of idiocy, people just being totally incompetent and never realizing that this is a problem and never taking effort to fix it, which I have a hard time believing that, with so many passionate people out there, there are a lot of people that are not evil at all, that like when confronted with shit like this will be like, hey, we gotta do something. So, you know, to like the fact that like even with that huge contingent nothing really changes, to me is like, there's probably a reason why this isn't changing. And the reason is that there's a benefit for someone. And usually the benefit is for the person that is providing the capital to run the whole system, you know, that without them, you can't keep it going. So you gotta appease them. So, I mean, and that's like, you know, early education. When you get into college, I mean, it's a whole nother game. You know, it's basically the same people who realized they could fucking scam people out of their money by convincing them that they could afford certain mortgages and then not fully explaining the legality and the fine print about what this shit actually means, so that you can basically, like, you know, sell them a $600,000 mortgage that they pay over the years $300,000 of, and then you foreclose their house and are able to get $700,000 for the foreclosed house that you actually, like, you know, that person only owed $300,000 on it, and you're making money hand over fist. And then, you know, we get back to the question of, was that money actually real in the first place? You know, it's a huge hole, and all these things are, to me, interrelated. But ultimately, I think people need to wake up to the fact that, like, it's hard to really address this issue because there's so many, like, hot button words like the man, you know. And when I talk about the man, I'm talking about a state of being, like a way of programming that some people are programmed to exploit other people and to step over the cold, dead bodies of their friends and family in order to get where they need to go. This is like, it's like a disease. It's like a psychological disease that makes the man, you know. And this is a widespread disease that infects thousands and thousands of people.
It's poetic, Chris.
Thank you, Donnell. But so when I talk about the man, what I'm talking about is this, like, you know, sort of amorphous mentality that drives people to behave in a certain way that is not beneficial in the long run for anybody but them, that is exploitative, that is destructive. And I think it's important for people to wake up to the fact that this mindset is so prevalent out there, and you're being attacked by it on all fronts, such as, you know, the mortgage fraud and student loan debt, and all these things are basically just, you know, just games to get you to, like, bleed yourself dry for someone else's benefit, you know. And they use the tools of media in terms of, like, what the things that people digest in their everyday life, news, television, books, magazines, newspapers, to create a narrative that benefits getting people into this shit. And that's all shit that they control anyways. So they use the tools that they have to be able to make you think that they're doing you a favor by bleeding yourself dry. And I think education is one of those things that we really have to take a step back and look at and say, you know, obviously we all agree that education is a good thing, but are we actually educating people? And are we preparing them for life? Are we putting them in a situation where they are going to be able to develop to their full potential? Or do we want to just keep chugging along with the with the system that basically prepares people for a life of slavery. I mean, there's so many other facets to this. We haven't even talked about the race aspect or the class aspect of things, which is a huge issue as well. But we'll save that for another podcast. But since we're kind of getting to a point where I know Donnell's got to bounce out in a little bit, I wanted to sort of like shift to a related but separate topic of let's just say sensitivity. There's been a lot of news stories lately, and I've noticed a lot in my Facebook friends and stuff like that. I have a lot of friends that are self-proclaimed activists. Whatever it is they're activists for depends on what the cultural paradigm is at that particular moment. I'm not calling them posers. I'm just saying that it's not just one particular issue that this is a problem with, but like, since I see so many activisty posts on my Facebook feed and Twitter and stuff like that, I'm seeing this a lot more lately, where people will preface certain kinds of stories with a quote unquote trigger warning. And for those of you who don't know what a trigger warning is, I guess it started out as like a feminist thing to be able to like warn people of like a little bit that the content that they're about to be reading or looking at could potentially be a trigger for them. If you've been assaulted before, or if you've been raped before, or if you've had psychological abuse before, you put a trigger warning just in case the person that's reading this has been raped, and it puts them through trauma reading about somebody's the details of somebody's rape. Sounds great, but now we're getting to the point where there are a lot of people that consider themselves liberal and activists and progressives and revolutionaries even. And there's this desire to like censor so many things about what people are allowed to talk about. And I read a story recently in where was it? In the New York Times, and I sent this around to everybody else on the podcast, that there's a movement to put these trigger warnings on like college syllabi. So like if you are in your class proposing that Huckleberry Finn is on the syllabus, there would be a trigger warning for racism on it. It's like, okay, the book deals with race. That's like part of the point of the book, is to like confront these realities of racism. And should we really be like so sensitive to the power of words that we feel the need to start censoring things to appease everyone's like, comfort level, And I always look at this in the sense of like, we have to be very careful about that kind of thing, because I think most people you pull off the street can agree that you shouldn't look someone in the eye and say, "You fat fuck. You're fucking obese. You look like shit." You shouldn't say that to somebody. But like, that's...
You're looking me straight in the eye.
It hurt, didn't it?
Chills
It
over
did.
You felt it.
Ah,
Words have power. I mean, it's true. Like,
no,
you're,
for real.
you're not fat.
Thank you.
You look quite handsome.
I lost 100 pounds,
Can
actually.
you guys tell how beautiful Phil is from the webcam here?
You also note the fact that Phil and Donnell are twinsies today.
Double dragon.
But
I'm Danny DeVito. He's Schwarzenegger.
but like, let's think about this a little bit, because I mean, obviously, it's not a good thing to just straight up insult somebody to their face with mean intentions. That's that's just not cool. But what about in an artistic sense? You know, we just recently saw on the Colbert Report, which I'm not a huge fan of, like the show or the Daily Show, and I don't really watch shit like that. But the fact that this story came out was interesting to me. And if people don't know about the story, I think it revolves around it was satire of the Washington Redskins, not wanting to change the name of their team for historical reasons or branding or whatever, even though it's basically a racist slur. It's pretty fucking racist. You should probably change it. But rather than change it, they decided to like develop a charity where, and I think that I don't have it written down in front of me, but the name of the charity was like as equally as offensive as the name of the team.
It was like Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Orientals or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
that was the satirical joke that Colbert made. Like, why don't we make the Ching Chong Ding Dong Association for Chanks or whatever? It's obviously a joke. It's obviously meant to point out the sheer ridiculousness of like the argument on the side of the Redskins people. But taken out of context, people went fucking apeshit about this, and they started a Twitter campaign to cancel Colbert's show, said he's a racist, demonized him like crazy. And like I said, I don't give a fuck about him personally. He's not like my hero. I don't really watch the show. But like, we've talked about many times on this podcast that art most of the time is what changes people's perceptions. Like, hearing a fucking crazy joke and hearing someone put something into a context that you never thought of it before can actually change your mind. Like, and should we censor him from saying shit like that because taken out of context someone is going to be offended by the terminology rather than the meaning behind it and the point behind it? I don't know. I just feel like we're getting to a point where it's so much of a slippery slope. And there was another article that I read where in the title of the article they referred to something as lame, which is a term that pretty much everybody uses, But the first comment on this fucking article was like, I would appreciate if you don't use ableist slurs like lame. Which, now granted, I'm not someone with a disability.
I think lame lost that meaning a long time ago.
I feel the exact same way.
I didn't even know. I'll be honest.
When you think about it, you're like, oh yeah,
lame or
yeah,
something,
yeah, it does mean that.
Like,
Yeah.
these terms are archaic.
Or dumb,
Right.
Dumb means like you can't talk or something like
Right.
that. But like nobody, when calling someone dumb, is saying, motherfucker, you can't talk. You have no voice. You can't talk.
Yeah.
That's not what it means. But where's the line when you get into like, trying to dictate what is appropriate for people to talk about, what is not appropriate, what, should someone avoid reading a certain book because it may bring up an uncomfortable situation for them, even though they may. Yeah, I mean, what do you have you guys encountered this in your lives, like where people have been wanting to censor things that you've said because it could be offensive to someone? And again, I'm not talking about like direct insults. Intention is everything here.
Actually, I can't think of the only thing that comes to mind is when I don't like certain bands and then I'm told I should be nice. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But I can't think of any time that I've personally been censored. I can definitely think of times I've heard people say things where I'm like, wow, I'm really surprised you can talk like that, just because it's certain ways of speaking are just unattractive, I guess. You know,
I've certainly witnessed a lot of censorship. I've always had a problem with it, but I've never really felt censored. Aside from, back to education, aside from like a teacher of mine who would like I was kind of that student who felt if they had something to say, they would say it, and sometimes they would I would share it with the rest of the class, and I had one teacher who like took issue with that, and like I would constantly be like removed from the class for saying things that she thought like the other class members shouldn't be hearing, but I thought they should know. I think censorship just across the board is a bad thing. I think like banning books is a bad thing. I think putting a warning label in a college class is a ridiculous thing. Phil brought up the point earlier that college is about like opening your mind and engaging with challenging thoughts and issues. Like that's the point. I think like if teachers want to announce at the beginning of the class, hey, by the way, this has like some rape stuff in it. If that's an issue for you, like come talk to me, come talk to a guidance counselor, you know, seek help, drop the class. Like it could be an option, but I think mandating it and force censorship is ridiculous.
I think there's a difference between being offended because of some material that's being presented and being offended because you're being targeted. In these cases, I feel like no one's being targeted, and if you're offended, then I feel like you should really assess why. Like, and that's part of the learning process, right? Like, you should see what it is that makes you feel so uncomfortable about whatever it is presented, and maybe figure that out.
And deal with it. Even with like in the city when they made nudism illegal, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, why are we talking about this? Why is this like an issue of debate? Why are we making a law about this? Why is money being allocated to this discussion? And like, who gives a fuck? Someone wants to walk around with his dick out, let him walk around with his dick out.
I just saw a nudist the other day. Actually,
they still do it.
And Dolores.
I'm glad they should. I don't think it's anyone else's like place. Turn your head. Like you don't want to see it. The dick. Turn your head. And in this book, you know, you don't want to read the word lame in a fucking internet article that you're trolling. Like, read a different article on the internet, or like grow the fuck up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, Donnell, you're our only black person here today, so I gotta ask you: do you feel offended by offensive language that is used in a way that is not like an insult? Like let's say there's an article about slavery and it's laden with the N-word. Or let's say this is, you know, Quentin Tarantino movie. And it's not said in a derogatory way. It's not meant to put anybody down. It's simply to acknowledge that this was a fact of reality at a certain point in history, and it's uncomfortable. But for you, is that the same thing as someone straight up like looking you in the face and calling you a nigger, or like what is? So does it like? Do you feel it in?
So
like
I certainly can't speak for all black people.
Why not?
Or I could. I'm gonna speak for all black people.
But you're black,
so. I think there's a part of me that like reacts, and I hear the word, and like all these thoughts rush to mind, and in a way I think that's a good thing. I think there are people who say like, oh, we need to like kill those words and remove those words from our vocabulary, and it's like, you can't remove the effects of slavery from my existence. So why would you like remove this word from our vocabulary? Like, it happened, it's real, deal with it. Like, yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable to hear it. Yeah. And then I need to think about why, and think about like if black people had achieved equality by this point, it wouldn't fucking bother me to hear it, would it? Like if I was sitting up in my penthouse somewhere, like feeling like I had made it and like black people had made it, it wouldn't hear me to hear like the word nigger get thrown around. But when I hear the word nigger and I think, oh yeah, wait, we're still second class citizens, like it bothers me a bit. And I think that's healthy. And across the board for all of these words like that should be censored, or even the rape, it's like, yeah, rape is some real shit. Right. You're feeling it because it's real, and like we need to solve the issue of rape, not just not talk about it.
Right. Now, is someone joking about it? Is that a different context?
It's just annoying, and like when I was younger, I would like try to pull them aside and talk to them, and, oh, you know, why are you saying that, and you shouldn't be saying that, and that's like offensive. But it's kind of the same thing. As
Right.
hopefully they'll be forced to address what, like, the context of what they're saying, and like forced to understand it. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad that they're saying it, or that anyone has a place to tell them they shouldn't be saying it.
I mean, when you get down to it, like, if we're talking about, if we want to live in a world where nobody offends anybody, which seems to be what some of these people are desiring, excuse me, like, I don't know, I just think about all the deep shit that has come out of, like, offense, like George Carlin or Richard Pryor, or I guess, you know, maybe someone like Lenny Bruce, or like a lot of these people that were like offensive, like saying shit that like really shook people up, but actually like made them think and reconsider things. And if you didn't have the freedom to do that and rile somebody up in order to get them to like think about why they're riled up in the first place, or like understand that it's not the word is just a word. The word is just a sound that we're making, that we've all kind of agreed what the meaning of it is. Like, it's the social context of that word that is really what is getting to you. And you can't change a social context of a word without, I mean, by like whitewashing it, you know, by just getting it out of there. You know, you can pretend like it doesn't exist. You know, we can pretend like rape doesn't exist, but rape is still going to be happening. And it's not necessarily like the right approach. I think people's hearts are in the right place in a lot of circumstances, but they don't think about the fact that, like, look past your initial like reaction to it and break it down. Like, think about it, analyze it, and try and take something away from it. Maybe if you had an education, you'd be able to do that shit. You know?
It's weird that you bring it up, because one of my friends, Lindy, just shared a photo on Facebook that was essentially, you know, the Teach Men Not to Rape campaign thing, and there were a few guys that like had a huge problem with this poster,
Right.
and just they even explicitly said that they felt targeted. And
Wow.
Well,
yeah,
maybe they should stop raping girls.
yeah, and they couldn't understand that you cannot rape and also perpetuate rape culture. And they got in this huge conversation about rape culture not being real. And of course, I can't not give my 2 cents. And there's a lot of, I mean, I don't like re-saying what other people are saying. So it gets to this point where it's like, hey, exactly what you said. If you're offended, you should really think about why you're offended, because we're giving you this information, we're sending you articles to read, and you're just you're
angry.
kind of you're just angry. You gotta think about why are you so offended, and assess that. And
That's crazy.
it's weird how everything just comes back.
No, I see that a lot with like, there's like a certain kind of white guy that like whenever anybody brings up inequality of any kind,
Like white privilege, male privilege kind of thing.
it's like,
I know this guy.
Privilege.
yeah, exactly. Oh, you know that guy?
I met that guy.
Yeah, I know that guy too.
Yeah, I think we all.
It's like I don't know, it's this cognitive dissonance that people don't want to like even like go down that road, because they know like the eventual where it ends up is like they got to stop being the fucker they are, you know, like that they can't continue to justify their behavior and the way and their privilege or whatever it is once they like go down that road, you know. Once they have learned that and accepted it and internalized it, you can't be a dick anymore.
They just don't want to swallow like what's happening around them. They might have an idea of like some of the systems in place and processes at work, but they don't want to admit it. And then like an article like that or something you're talking about like comes up, and they're just like, confronted by it and they're scared. And they're angry and.
Well, these
sad.
are all people that, like us, have been brainwashed by the idea that, like, the American dream is you can be whatever you want to be if you work hard enough. And the subtext of that is that if you're not doing, if you're not succeeding, then you're not trying hard enough. You're lazy. You're a fuck up. You feel entitled to something, which isn't the case. I mean, sometimes it's the case, but there's an actual system of institutionalized racism, sexism, classism. Yeah, this shit is real.
Geographic locationism.
Yeah, it's
could be as simple as where you were born.
Right, and it's not as simple as just working hard. To imply that someone who is poor is just not working hard enough is probably one of the most insulting things you can say to someone who's working, 3 back-to-back jobs, doesn't even see their fucking kids, and still can't make ends meet. Like, are you fucking kidding? Like, you're gonna look me straight in the face and say I'm not working hard enough. Go fuck yourself, But I always want to try and leave things on a positive note. So how are we gonna leave this on a positive note, guys?
Oh man,
I'm putting this on you.
should we play that X-Files track?
Yeah,
The X-Files track on cue.
No, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's positive that people have to confront these uncomfortable realities, and hopefully they'll grow and become better people by confronting them. And my only piece of advice to Phil here is don't fucking get involved in comments on a Facebook post. Don't fucking
Be a bigger man, take the higher road.
I can't not when I see dumb things.
I know. I
or
feel it
ignorant
too.
things.
It's
Not,
just
not
like,
even dumb,
are
just
they
ignorant.
enlightened after reading your comment?
No,
They're
you're just.
And it's
I
like
know.
you want to write it, and like it feels good to write it, and then you're just like, "Fuck, this person is gonna be just as dumb."
Yeah, and it's just they're just gonna pick it apart and focus on one thing. and it's
There's
gonna-
a difference between being stupid and just being ignorant.
That's true.
Ignorance can be cured. Ignorance,
That's true.
there's a solution to that, and it's a matter of getting someone to be comfortable with admitting that they're wrong, and admitting that, hey, or maybe I am wrong. Let me see what else is out there. And I feel like if someone's ignorant, I can help. that's
Hey, that's
See,
a
that's the
positive
problem.
note, world.
yeah.
Unless
See?
Chris.
Yeah, what? Come on,
No,
Chris,
no.
bring it down. Bring it down.
That's the white man's burden, man. You can't start feeling like that. You can't feel like you can fix everybody. You can't feel like you have the power to change that kind of shit, because
Is that because I'm white though?
that's ego. It's the white man's burden is something else. But
It's like the metaphorical white.
Oh, metaphor.
look it up and you'll see the connection. But it's it's something that you can't really indulge in. Like, write it, get it out of yourself, type it into an email, and save it as a draft and never send it to anybody. Because, like, not only is it going to start a flame war and it's going to create stress in your life, it's going to make you feel like way worse. And it's going to have, like, put you in this place where you feel like the world is just impossible.
But what if
YouTube
everybody
comments,
did that?
man. YouTube comments.
YouTube comments are the best though. Those are
YouTube
funny. But what if everyone did that? What if everyone treated everything like that?
Right. I feel like sometimes enlightenment leads to apathy. I know, like, that's been
Yeah.
the case in my own life. I'm like, I feel so guilty about how apathetic I am about things.
Yeah.
So maybe Phil's got it.
Well, I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm just saying don't do that.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Do the right thing.
you got to you got to think about what is actually gonna change something, and that's, you can't tell somebody shit. You can't tell anybody anything, and we've talked about this before. Like, if you have a friend that is dating a fucking deadbeat, and he's a deadbeat, everybody knows he's a fucking deadbeat. You can tell your friend, dude, your boyfriend's a fucking deadbeat. You need to ditch that motherfucker. But she's not going to do it. She's going to refocus that on you. And refocus the like anger or resentment or whatever she feels from the relationship onto you until the day comes where like she gets it and she's like, holy fuck, this guy's a deadbeat.
When
Like,
the car she co-signed on gets repoed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And then why didn't you tell me sooner?
then it's over.
Why
know?
didn't you tell me?
But you can't tell her a goddamn thing.
Alright,
Telling
guys.
her is not gonna
I gotta head to a show at the Great American Music Hall.
go for it, Donnell.
What show?
Sean Lennon.
Ooh.
Yeah, John Lennon's son is playing a show
With his model
with
girlfriend,
his model girlfriend.
ghost of
Ooh.
a saber-toothed tiger.
When's
Anyway,
the
we're going to
second
be
episode?
wrapping this up anyway. So peace out to Donnell.
You make me feel like a natural woman.
I hope that's in our intro. I hope I got that on recording.
You make me feel.
They were doing a nice
you
duet
make
before.
me feel. You make me feel like a natural woman.
But everybody out there, let's stop getting into YouTube arguments. Let's stop getting into fucking Facebook debates about shit. And let's realize that, like, the only way shit changes is by changing someone's mind. And the most effective way to do that is through media, is through art, is through writing, is through creating something that means something and presenting it to people so that they can digest it themselves and come to an understanding. Because that's the only way that they're going to change how they feel. You can't tell them shit. You can't show them shit. They have to feel it for themselves. So if you get that like stinging sensation to like go off on somebody on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, pause. Open up a Microsoft Word document, open up a Google Doc, something, and just start like writing, how can I do something positive with this? Like how can I put this into a format where it might actually like change somebody's mind? How can I internalize these feelings, understand how they affect me, and try and recreate that for someone else so that they can come to that same understanding? Those are my words of wisdom for today. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Between You, Me, and Jose. Big thanks to Donnell. Big thanks to Phil.
Thank you.
It's been a very enlightening discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully you guys can, get some sort of entertainment out of this, even if we don't have a superstar guest here. Or, we're not talking about sex and drugs and all that fun shit. So I hope you guys actually, listen and think about this thing, because the point of this podcast is not just to like entertain people. It's not just to like talk about bands and music, but to talk about the nature of media in general and how we can use the tools provided to us by the internet and technology to start to change some of these fucked up things that we deal with in our lives that have been systematic and seem impossible to overcome. So that's about it, guys. Thanks again for tuning in to Between You, Me, and Jose. We'll be back next week with another episode. Every Wednesday, you can find us on the Slims Presents blog. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher. And follow us on Twitter at BYMJ Podcast. And tell your friends about it. Share it on Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr or whatever you use. And, help us get the word out there. I'm trying to do some big things here. So next week we'll have Dregs1. He's going to be our guest. We're going to talk about some more deep shit and talk about San Francisco, gentrification, all that fun stuff. So I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
selling these prisms at festivals. Like, that was like the foundation of the Dimmer Company in like 1974 or something like that. I just said early 70s. And that was actually, that studio was in Oakland at this warehouse, like right on the
pretty close to
estuary. Yeah.
We
went there the other day, and it was
wild.
This dude like still lives there, like his friend, and is like has this crazy like time, like he like literally, I think my mom thinks he's an alien. My mom literally thinks he's an alien because he like hasn't aged and like
time travel.
And like he builds these crazy like steam powered
So if you move to Oakland, you can travel in time.
You can like propel yourself across like a desert floor, like it's like steampunk, and like in a couch chair. And it's just like a steam-powered couch chair that just like propels you.
What?
Yeah, dude.
Steam-powered?
Couch chair that just like moves you like a Segway
Basically,
scooter.
he took a couch and then like literally put a car chassis on it and a
then
huge engine.
provided
and it was powered by
boiling
steam.
water and whatever.
Yeah, and his whole
There's a like, yeah,
Probably
there's,
really
like, people
loud.
like
It'd be like a
and
warehouse
annoying.
as big as Slim's filled with the weirdest shit you've ever seen that he made himself by his own hands.